Hey everybody, welcome to Apocalypse Rising. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a while since I made one of these, but nothing crazy's really happened, so I guess it's no big deal. I did find this article today, about 10 minutes ago, and I thought, oh, I gotta talk about this. So, this is from NPR.org, and the title is, Earth has 11 years to cut emissions to avoid dire climate scenarios, a report says. 11 years. I'm not sounding as crazy as I used to.
Do it! Just do it!
Right? Because I'm saying 2030, you know, that's what, 9 years away? They're saying 11 years now. I mean, give or take couple years. It's coming a lot faster and sooner than we thought. The current rate of greenhouse gas pollution is so high that Earth has about 11 years to rein in emissions if countries want to avoid the worst damage from climate change in the future. Well, we have to figure out, you know, what kind of study this was, who did the research, how are they backing this stuff up. But, you know, I'm biased because 11 years is right around my target for dire climate consequences. And this part's really funny because here they are talking about dipping greenhouse gas emissions in 2020 because of the global pandemic. But now they're back on track to return to pre-pandemic levels. I mean, who thought they wouldn't?
You are really dumb, for real.
Who thought they wouldn't? The only reason that they were low is because we stopped our economies. It had nothing to do with technology and all of a sudden humans realized, oh no, we really got to cut back. No, it was forced upon us by a pandemic. And now that the pandemic is at bay, the greenhouse gases are just going to keep going up. The findings currently under review before publication. So, we really got to take this one with a grain of salt.
Mega doo-doo.
Underscore that the urgency of cutting emissions is even greater than previously thought if the world is to avoid a rise in average global temperatures that's greater than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So they really were talking about it being 1.5 degrees. Like they wanted to pretend, oh, under 2 degrees Celsius, but they really don't want to go over 1.5 degrees. And we're close to that already. It's like 1.2. So, and we're rebounding back to where it was before the pandemic. The forests are burning, the water's drying up. What's changing? Fusion is really coming on quick, and it has to come on quick because we're talking 11 years based on this publication. It's probably just somebody that watches my YouTube. But it's more going to be like 9 or 10 years. So close enough. The global carbon budget is compiled with input from dozens of researchers around the world. It monitors the amount of carbon dioxide that humans put out and how much room is left for such emissions to stay within the 1.5 Celsius limit. This is interesting to me because I've actually never researched like how they detect this stuff and where do they get their numbers from.
Funny one.
I guess I just trust them that they know how to test the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, estimate what's causing that, and how long it would take based on the correlation between carbon dioxide and temperature rise. But what I think is even crazier is that the carbon dioxide has just gone up exponentially for a long time. It's just going straight up. And we're at 1.5 now. So does that mean that the CO2 that we're at the moment is reflective of this temperature? It's just like COVID. I've said this before. The cases go up and the deaths lag behind. Then the deaths spike up. Well, I think that's what's happening here with CO2 and carbon emissions, is that it's spiking up. And we're just now seeing the lagging indicator, which is the temperature rise. So temperature rise is death, CO2 is cases, right? When the first report was issued in 2015, scientists projected that Earth had a 20-year time horizon before emissions would result in warming above the set limit. So in 2015, they had 20 years. I mean, obviously, I'm not a scientist or a mathematician, but that gives us until 2035. Okay, so that's still not even that far off from 2030, and now it's reduced down a couple years. 4 years or so, because they've redone their modeling. Basically, the variables have changed.
Breakfast!
But the output of greenhouse gases has risen even faster than expected, with half of that budget expended in just the past 6 years. So this is where you do have to be kind of good with math to figure it out. But I'm telling you that math usually boils down to a close estimate, and 2030 is looking pretty dire here. At current levels of emissions, there's a 50% chance that a rise in temperatures of 1.5 C by the end of this century will be locked in by 2033. It's already locked in. I mean, this still isn't extreme enough for me. It's locked in right now. With no reductions, more dire scenarios are equally likely, with 1.7 degrees Celsius increase inevitable by 2042 and a 2 degrees Celsius jump unavoidable by 2054. So let's just go with this conservative analysis here.
Daniel?
Based on revamped data that they've collected and didn't anticipate in their first equation. Now it's revised based on the same principles they used here. So in 3 more years, is this going to be irrelevant? That's what I think. So you're talking about a 2 degrees Celsius jump in 2054. That's when the soil starts releasing greenhouse gases. I mean, at that point, it's going to be permafrost, ice, soil, trees burning, the water's drying up. I mean, who knows what the Gulf Stream's going to look like in 2054? That's it. Game over. We are toasty.
He needs some milk.
Remember, toasty by 2050? What, 2100? What a joke. Now we're going to start laughing at 2050. 2050, more like 2030. Okay, now 2030, it's not going to be 2 degrees, but it could be. It actually could be. And this is talking about intensifying wildfires, floods, and hurricanes.
Mother Nature!
And that's over 150 years. The temperatures have risen by 1.1 degrees Celsius over 150 years. So it's compounding, which means it's going to go faster now. So global fossil CO2 emissions, excluding cement, which is a huge contributor. What? In 2021 are returning towards their 2019 levels after decreasing 5.4%. Yeah, so in 1 year, we've eliminated basically what we saved by being trapped in a pandemic. And it's just going to continue on. The authors note that reaching net zero CO2 emissions by 2050, which is the goal of those pushing climate action at the Glasgow summit, entails cutting total anthropogenic CO2 emissions by an amount comparable to the decrease during 2020. Every year we have to be like we're in a pandemic. I mean, go watch my videos. I am crazy. I'm not very intelligent, but this is all stuff I've been saying. And how are we going to have an economy if we have to live like we did in 2020 during a pandemic? It's going to take years to get our technology up to a point where we can actually do that. Years. And we only have 11. And it's going to compound. So like this changed, this is going to change. Not in a positive direction. And then this right here is irrelevant. Emissions from China, which in recent years has surpassed the US as the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter, have exceeded pre-pandemic levels. They're already blown past it. However, there are a few encouraging signs in the report, notably that emissions have decreased over the past decade in 23 countries whose economies were growing before the coronavirus pandemic. Well, that's all great, but the overall is still increasing, so whoop-de-frickin-do. You know, how are we going to fix this, folks? I mean, what are we going to do? This is not something where we can sit around and debate about anymore. You know, we have until kicking the can down the road, just like with the economy. This is real now. The only thing that's going to prevent cataclysmic climate destruction of human beings is
the Bible. This is the Bible. You question the words of the mighty.
As if everything is electric and run off of fusion in the next 5 years. Period. There's no other way. The water is going to be evaporated, washed up, animals everywhere, disease running rampant, temperatures rising, bacteria and fungus growing, invading species everywhere. I mean, melting ice, melting permafrost, CO2 releasing greenhouse gases, forests burning. The Gulf Stream could potentially be collapsed to where Europe and North America go into a deep freeze. I mean, the food supply disruption that would cause, on top of everything else. Of course, during all this, the economy will just absolutely collapse into nothing. Money will be worthless. And you're telling me that's not Armageddon?
Allahu Akbar!
So we have 11 years to cut emissions to avoid dire climate scenarios. Let's see if we can do it.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I had some crazy things happen in my life lately. I feel bad because I've been avoiding my family and just pretty much having a mental breakdown. I feel like the stress level is up. The baseline stress level is up. But before I digress too far, I'm starting to kind of come back around, and I just saw that article and I thought, man, this is sounding like what we're talking about. You know, it doesn't sound as outlandish as it used to. People used to give me shit about talking about this stuff and saying I was too extreme and I didn't know what I was talking about. I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I have a strong inclination that we're going down a very dark path here when it comes to the climate, and we're just blindly following what we've been doing, thinking that something's just going to come out of nowhere and fix it, that we have until 2050. I mean, let's see, how old am I right now? That's 30 years from now. I could potentially still be alive. Now I'm going to be old and probably getting ready to die, but that's a way sooner. You know, you're talking about best case scenario now is 2050. Okay, and I think it's 2030s is when we're really going to start seeing, especially if the Gulf Stream collapses. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Hopefully that doesn't happen and I can just eat crow and that's fine. You know, that'll satiate me for a while and we can move on. But right now, let's just take a look and see the reality of things. Make some better choices. including myself. I'm just as guilty as everyone else. And on that note, I'll talk to you next time.